Here now, present in this moment, in every moment, at all times, excited about variety of topics that are coming through your questions today. As there is the sound of neighbors celebrating with a little bit more loud music, very pleasing music in the background, celebrating life, celebrating the inevitable experience of their own question answer dance in this and in every other moment. We want to remind you that the satisfaction that you're experiencing is always in discovery. Your satisfaction is not in the place of ease that you feel, nor is the stirred up experience of your question sometimes very loud in a sense of generating a lot of your focus time. But it's that journey, movement from the question place into the place of answer, and from the answer into the place of another question. Because on the heels of every answer that you receive on any topic that is of importance to you, there is always movement towards the next question. And those tipping points that we often talk about, tipping points between easing yourself from the question into seeing the answer, and then allowing to open the door for your next question in a more deliberate, in a more choice way for yourself, is what really makes for that beautiful dance of collaborative creation within your focus outwards and then unfocus within you, and focus outwards and unfocus within you. As you go about all beautiful questions that you have lined up, we thought that would be a good place to start. That place that once you zoom in sometimes on your question, or you zoom out to feel the ease of the answer, you at all times have access to the whole creation of that particular topic that it's at hand. So as you observe that, you can always go and narrow it down and go back into the wider place, narrow it down and go back into the wider place. And this is this dance that we so stubbornly talk about, because you are not easing yourself into the place of disconnection from others. You're just dancing in a place of so much satisfaction as you find that the choices about tipping points are always at all times yours to make. In anticipation of a first question today with eagerness, we're ready. Go ahead.
Hi, Weola and everyone. I am so satisfied. Thank you guys for participating here, because the questions, like on Wednesday, I got more out of it through everyone else's questions, much more than my own. So thank you in advance. And I just wanted to talk about, after Wednesday, I got this beautiful understanding of how everything fits together, and what you just said about the tipping points being under my control and choice, and that's the key to it all, and being deliberate about when to open the door to the questions so that it's pleasurable all along the way. And also about not going into it from a place, or into anything for that matter, from a place of need, but out of wants. And this is really the key to bliss throughout both question and answer. And I am just really enjoying the process of creation for one reason only, and that is to basically co-create with non-physical. And after Wednesday, I got this awareness of this greater mind that just so all fits together, where Weola and Abraham and all these great minds and geniuses are. And I just love tapping into that greater mind and receiving and co-creating and getting the next. And it's just that joy in the unfolding of that. So I'd love for you guys to talk about, or for you to talk about this idea of this participation of this greater mind in this co-creation.
We like direction in which you are going when it comes to your awareness of multiple avenues of your experience. We are just very focused, very stubborn, and in recent broadcasts more and more persistent about you looking into the blended experience and not so much in your physical and non-physical. In other words, that is given that you have multi-dimensional experience of self. This steady, what you might call not physical, we like to refer to it as everything that exists part of you. And you just refer to it as a greater mind. Some may call it collective consciousness, source, God, divine, regardless of what words you're using for that. There is that steady, we often describe it as infinite field of everything that exists, and that everything that exists constantly reconfiguring and changing to your satisfaction with every question that's being asked, not only by you, but every other focusing mechanism, as well as every particle in the universe. So this feeling of that steadiness, of that ease, answer, love, appreciation, bliss vibration that you're talking about, that steady place is at all times there as a reference point to you, as a steady reference point of that which you may call well-being that is in the essence of everything that exists. And so as you go into your experience of physicality, oftentimes that separation focus can get you into the place of now you're physical and now you're with the greater mind. Now you're physical and now you're with the greater mind. And at all times we want you to know that the blendedness is really what you're experiencing. You're never really not aware of that which you call non-physical part of you. You're never really not in collaboration, or as you said, co-creation with that part of you, because it is inevitable that that steady eternal part of you at all times is like an infinite web, like an infinite network, like an infinite field of possibilities that you are moving through by pointing your focus in this direction and this direction and this direction from this unique, unparalleled position of self in this and every other physical iteration. So as you go about that dance and you understand that in the balance of that experience that you have, that in the balance of that experience is we use it in a very simple way. We use very simple words. We know that often friends and a lot of teachers would offer words such as laws. And while we agree on those, we do not like to use that terminology as often, because softer the terminology sometimes comes through, you see more ease about it. You see, the creation process is very simple. It is always balanced in the nature because it's at all times moving through. Think about it as a bicycle that it's constantly in the motion and never really stopping for one moment on this way or this way. And even when it feels like you need to slow down, you continue going, it continues moving. We often refer to the wave analogy as the wave is constantly coming through the shore and then comes back into the ocean and goes back into the playing of the wave and comes back into the ocean and moves into another wave. In other words, what you see in infinite field of droplets in the ocean, even on the deeper ocean, was at some point the wave, and then it's finding its way to move through that water and come up to the surface and go back down. In other words, we're making all of these analogies for you to see that the movement is in the essence of everything that exists. Not the place of physicality or non-physicality, but the movement at all times from that place which is the question and that place which is the answer, all orchestrated as a beautiful, simple creation process that you can zoom in on pieces of it, or you can zoom out and observe it all. You can narrow it down to the tipping point, or you can narrow it down to the question, or you can narrow it down to the answer, or you can narrow it down to the other tipping point. But you can also see it from that place of everything that exists for what it truly is. it is this miracle experience of blissful creation between your own question-answer dance.
And I love that so much because yes, absolutely, it is a blendedness of this collaboration, and I'm experiencing even the question vibration can often be received from that, what I'm calling the greater mind, or those higher vibrations. But I do realize that we often also tune into lower vibrations. So I'm curious, how would you describe that process where we are tuning into more vibrations that are out there from a place of what's put out by mass consciousness and what the typical human experience has been up until now? How would you describe that?
We like your attempt to categorize a typical human experience, but we will go with it for a moment. We will go with it for a moment because we understand what you're saying. What you're saying is there is more and more awareness about more and more people finding ease about their own question-answer dance. There is more and more steadiness in that place. But we want to bring to your attention that humanity, that people are not moving in the place of becoming less and less physical and less focused in physicality and more focused in non-physicality. In other words, this place of you feeling this steadiness and ease and satisfaction is always experienced internally. So you at all times have the access to it. But you're here to dance. You're here to dance between that observation of variety, making preferences, and bringing it back into integration of your own ease and steadiness, and going to play again and bringing it back into the ease. So it's not that you're observing that more people are moving from the question and now more into the answer. In other words, that they're moving from that place of observing so much variety and having such extended questions and problems and fights and arguments, but actually coming back into the place of ease and bliss and satisfaction. What you're witnessing is more people finding the way to observe the whole creation process instead of feeling that the only part of creation process or dominant part of the creation process is this what you call question vibration. And so we rarely even like to use those words. We like to use the words vibration because everything vibrates in its nature and oscillates because of that movement. But once you move from the place of vibration, and sometimes vibration is interpreted as a place that you achieve, as a place that you gather, but we want you to know that you're at all times dancing in variety of frequencies. You're at all times dancing in variety of infinite movements and vibrations, and you are only choosing what are you observing out of that all. So instead of thinking that you're in a high vibration or in a low vibration dominantly, or someone that you're observing, you want to think that everyone is constantly dancing in infinite possibilities of that which you call vibration, and then choosing what is the predominant choice as you go about this moment and this moment, and so for every day, month, year, and longer periods of times at hand. In other words, you're never really in a place of one or another. You're constantly experiencing both, but what are you predominantly giving your attention to is really the question. In other words, there cannot be an answer feeling without the new question being born, and there cannot be the question generated without the feeling of answer being born, and that's happening simultaneously. All of the answers for all of the questions are regulated. They're physically, even most of them, ready for you in physicality at the time of asking the question. And at the same time, as you're feeling more dominantly that place of ease and satisfaction and answer vibration, at that time, new feeling of question is underway. In other words, that dance that you experience, the balance about your own question-answer dance is really what you're talking about. It's about the steadiness of what are you choosing to perceive, because you have infinite choices in infinite levels and layers of vibrations or frequencies, and you are making the choice. Where are you predominantly want to give your attention to?
Yeah, and I'm so happy you brought up this bicycle analogy, because I've been working or playing with this concept of the bliss and the bicycle. So my idea is to ride that bicycle blissfully and not go and move towards expansion from a place of this obsessive struggle that you see so often in these creative geniuses that seem so tormented by the momentum of the thinking instead of this dance of being present, because I'm finding that presence itself is sort of a portal that opens me up to this receiving, and I can just be playing and be in bliss and receive and be able to move forward.
So
be on
to
that bicycle.
follow up on that analogy you just so beautifully said, at all times you have access to this beautiful ride, but sometimes it's fun to speed it up. Sometimes it's fun to narrow your focus so much so in observing variety, and sometimes you take the speed and look to this side or to this side, and you might even lose a little bit of balance, which means you slow down your ride until it becomes comfortable again, and then you start building more momentum and more momentum. In other words, those brilliant creators that you're talking about, you can see how steady they are in their own observation of their own creation from the perspective of their own focus and focus based off of how long their feeling of success sticks around, how long they're getting there steady. You have these brilliant creators that you can look into. They're moving on from one project to another, and then you sometimes even think, how is it even possible that they have this venture and this venture and this venture, and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. It is not that they're experiencing only bliss, and it's not because they're experiencing only the variety and vibration of question. It is that they're fine, that they're okay, that they're constantly increasing their awareness about the whole process, and they know when to speed up and they know when to slow down. In other words, with their attention being out or attention being in. And more of those things that they can go through and more of those things they can see, you can see how their experiences are multiplying, how their outputs into creation is multiplying more and more. And then you have those which you described as someone who worked hard and had a blip of a feeling out there and then found a bliss and balance in other ways around. In other words, those are as well brilliant creators that are having their outbursts, and there is no really necessity to measure it up in any way because your experience is so unique to you. As we said in the beginning, your experience is unparalleled in everything that exists from this vantage point, the next and the next and the next. In other words, from this now and the next and the next and the next. So as you go about your own blissful experience of your own creation, you want to keep in mind that those tipping points of when you go and direct your thoughts into more questions, and when you go and direct your thoughts into feeling of ease and relaxation, are at all times in your hands.
Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent conversation. We're excited for more. Go ahead.